Hello everyone, welcome back to Paul's Messy Bench Models. And in today's episode, instead of reviewing a single car kit, I'm going to review a model car company, Salvinos JR. It's a relatively new company. They've been around, I think, less than 5 years, but they're in the business of producing model kits of NASCAR. From so far, their kits have covered from the early 1970s up until the current year. They're actually working on releasing a car that's currently racing in the 2022 season. When Revell USA went out of business, Salvinos managed to get a hold of some of the monogram 1/24th scale stock car molds, and they've been repopping some of the 1980s monogram kits with brand new decals. They're also producing some 1/25th scale kits like these, and those are actually designed in-house. They've designed the kits themselves, and their production facilities are actually here in the United States, down in Southern California. If you look at the kits that Salvinos is offering for sale, basically if it's old in 1/24th scale, it's an old monogram kit, repopped with new decals and new tires. If it's 1/25th, it's something they've designed in-house by Jim Rogers. And the 1/24th scale 2022 season cars, the next gen cars, are also designed in-house and being manufactured here in the U.S., but they're not released yet. They're expected soon. Normally when I review car kits, I try to be as objective and neutral as possible, but in this case, where you've got a small company, taking on a big project and designing and producing their own kits all here in the U.S., I admit I've got kind of a bias. I won't spend a lot of time going over the kits that are made from the old monogram molds. If you're interested in building stock car models, you've probably already built a few of those. A thing to keep in mind when talking about the in-house designed 25th scale cars, they were designed by Jim Rogers, and he's working for a small company with a small staff, and basically his first shot at designing injection molded kits. I think overall he's done a very good job in putting these together. I've come up on some issues, but I will share them with you. A problem that you know about ahead of time is less of a problem than the one that surprises you. So the 1/25th scale kits come with this universal chassis, and by aligning this pin into one of the holes, it accommodates several different wheelbases. In designing it that way, you can see that you wind up with a gap in the middle of the car, and also there's some pretty big ejection marks on the bottom of the chassis, but that's not too difficult to deal with. I can show you what I did. Here's that chassis installed in the Oldsmobile. Basically I've covered the ejection pin marks with scraps of styrene, and that just sort of makes the underside look more detailed. And the chassis you get ends right at the back edge of the fuel tank. So on some of these cars, you'll want to extend the chassis a little bit with scraps of styrene. Covering these with strips works pretty well. I had trouble cleaning up the ones in the gas tank, and I found it was easier just to sand the gas tank smooth and then go back and add plastic strips to restore the detail that you sanded off. Since the Monte Carlo is a little bit wider than the other cars, I also add a strip of styrene stock on the side of the chassis, and that brings it out even to the bottom edge of the doors. So the bodies on the 25th scale kits, they are nicely molded and good and sturdy. The plastic is substantial, which means you're going to want to thin the edges of the wheel wells to get a good scale appearance. So one spot where you're going to have an interference issue or a fit issue is where the rear tires tuck into the fenders. You can see just where the fender flattens out on the backside, the tires are going to hit there, and that'll keep you from getting your suspension as far up as it's supposed to go. So if you thin this spot on the back part of the fender to about half its original thickness, your tires will fit fine. If you want a roller. If you don't want a roller, you can just flat spot the tire. That works too. For the Oldsmobile and the old Monte Carlo, you're going to have to thin the body right here at the top of the arch of the front fender and the top of the arch at the back fender, just to give you more clearance over the tires so that the body will drop down all the way. So the Oldsmobile and the Monte Carlo kit come with the same chrome tree, and you can see you get all the chrome you need for both. The kits usually include 2 different sets of wheels. You get a chrome set, and you also get a non-chrome plastic set with 5 holes. The thing about the Salvino is chrome, and I think it's actually automotive chrome, because the usual tricks of oven cleaner and degreaser or bleach have no effect on this chrome. As far as I can tell, you can't strip it. If you're one of those people that likes to paint your chrome, you're going to have to use a primer intended for metal. It's really important to mock things up as you go along. One of the spots that might give you trouble is getting the hood down on top of the engine. If I were you, I would leave the distributor and the carburetor and the air cleaner off until you get a chance to mock up the body onto the chassis, just to make sure that it's not going to hit the hood. If you leave the peg on, you might be able to just skip the carburetor and get the air cleaner down low. Also, when the air cleaner is really low, I had trouble with it hitting the distributor. And if you're going to wire your distributor, there's really not going to be much room under the air cleaner. So you might consider just cutting the peg off of the distributor and moving it backward a little bit so that it clears the air cleaner. But just watch out for that as you move forward. And on the 76 Charger, it all seems to go together well with no interference. But I got to tell you, there's no room to spare. So on the bottom of the Charger carburetor, make sure you've got it flattened out so nothing lifts it up off the intake manifold. And you might need to scrape some chrome away from the mating surface so that it drops down all the way onto the manifold. Inside the Charger bodies, where the firewall should be, there's this little sausage-shaped bump. And you can see there's 2 very faint lines in it, and the middle of that is supposed to be cut away. If you cut that middle part out, then your firewall will clip into that gap there and everything will fit just fine. So on these kits, if you build them straight out of the box, there's a curved seam between the dashboard and the top of the firewall. And I didn't like the look of that, so I just got a very thin sheet of plastic and I laid it on top of the seam painted it black. Make sure it's thin so it doesn't interfere with the fit of anything else. So the way the shroud around the radiator is designed, it's longer than it needs to be, and you trim it to fit the car that you're working on. They recommend leaving off the top part until you get your body on. On the Oldsmobile, I found that these side pieces actually hit the back side of the grill parts, and they would push the whole body forward. So on the Oldsmobile, you also want to trim those corners off, and that'll get it to clear the inside of the grill. On the Charger and the Monte Carlo, the windshields seem to fit pretty well. I had trouble with the windshield on the Oldsmobile. Out of the box, the windshield fits up against this plastic cross piece that's molded with the body, and I had a lot of trouble. It just seemed very fiddly to try to get the windshield in there and hold it in place while the glue set. And I've started another Oldsmobile that I think is going to go together easier. So on this Oldsmobile, I cut out that curved piece and I added a strip of styrene, thin strip, up against the bottom of that ridge there. And I traced the curve of the windshield onto another strip of styrene, and I glued that on top of it so that there's a little ledge there that catches the front end, or the front edge of the bottom of the windshield. It seems a lot easier to get it into place that way, that the bottom edge will catch on there, and then you can push it in, and it all seems to fit pretty well. You might have an issue with the back edge of the hood resting on top of the windshield so that your hood won't close all the way. So mock up your car, put the windshield in, and see if your hood will fit without rubbing against the windshield. On a couple of mine, I had to sand back the back edge and sort of bevel it from the underside, and that way it'll drop down all the way without hitting the windshield. At some point, somebody thought that the wheels should be labeled left and right. They're not. It's 53 rear and 53 front. So the sprues are actually labeled R and F. Don't go nuts looking for 53L because it's not there. The rear has the small hole. The front has the big hole. So on the front edge of the Oldsmobile roll cage, there's this little square tab on the front. That actually is not supposed to be there. But if you leave that on there, it'll just get in the way, and your roll cage won't go down all the way. So snip that off. That too. If you're building the old Monte Carlo, it has a wider wheelbase than the other cars. So there'll be spacers that go on the rear axle and front spindles to move the wheels out. If you use the standard front axle pins, they won't be long enough to glue on the wheels. So you'll need to go look for part 54XL. Those are the longer axle pins. The standard front axle pins are on the sprue by the water pump and the front shocks. The extended axle pins, 54XL, are on the sprue with the Monte Carlo front clips. So the Monte Carlo body, it has this flat part here that sort of stiffens the fenders when it's being ejected from the mold. And I left it in place when I built mine. And kind of hard to see, but it creates this weird kind of double layered effect here. and it forces you to trim a piece off the radiator shroud to get the body on. I'm thinking the next Monte Carlo I build, once I got the front clip glued on, this isn't really necessary anymore. I think I'm just going to cut it off. You can see the part right there, and it could be that the radiator shroud might not be long enough to go all the way up into this notch. But if it isn't, you know, it's not too tough to just put a sheet of something in there to plug the hole. So, not a necessary thing to do, but I think I might just cut that out. So these kits come with nice hood and trunk clips molded into the bodies. Unfortunately, as you're sanding and polishing the body and getting your hood to fit, they tend to get destroyed. So I really recommend going and getting yourself some ProTech hood clips. So the kits come with spoilers on the chrome tree, and they're okay. I just think they look a little bit thick and chunky. So I made my own out of strips of beer can. And on this one I used a punch to make some bolt heads out of, you know, beer can aluminum. And it's fun emptying the cans. I didn't use the safety nets that were supplied with the kits. This is actually a nylon window screen with a little bit of plastic strip on the edges. Salvino's gives you safety nets, but you know, they have to be manufactured within the limitations of what they can do with injection molding. Since all the design and manufacturing is happening in the United States, this company doesn't achieve the you know, the economic efficiency that much larger companies who outsource all this stuff to foreign countries are able to achieve. So you wind up paying about $40 a kit for these. You know, about $10 more than a current AMT kit. But my personal opinion is it's worth it, and it's kind of cool that all this is happening in America. So after building these kits, now I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing, and that the second time around will be even more fun than the first, because you know, the issues I've come across won't be surprises. And I've mocked up the Charger, and you know, I've obviously finished the Monte Carlo and the Oldsmobile. From what I can tell, the Charger kits are the easiest. Monte Carlo is probably the next easiest, and probably the most challenging would be the Oldsmobile. If you like the old monogram stock car kits, well, they're available again, but this time with decals that don't stink. So, if you're inclined that way, go get yourself one of the monogram kits. They'll be 24th scale. And also, in the next few weeks, maybe month, the next gen car will be available in 124 scale, and that's a Salvino's design, brand new kit. First time anybody's ever issued a stock car kit of a car that is in its first year on the track. So that's kind of cool. On Saturday mornings, the Salvino's people host a show on Facebook. I can provide a link for that in the video description. And they discuss, you know, the engineering of their kits and what they're working on. There's a lot of talk about stock car racing too. And from what I've seen on those shows, they're really trying to make the kits they're making going forward a lot easier for the novice or the first time builder to put together. And they've been putting their new car through a lot of back and forth iterations to make sure it goes together just right. So I'd encourage you to go check that out. So although these kits have some issues, none of them are particularly difficult to fix. I think the kits are a lot of fun, and if you know about the issues ahead of time, they're not going to surprise you and they're not going to frustrate you. It'll just be part of the process of building it. And, the process of building it is why we do it, right? That's the fun part. So, give it a try. I think you'll enjoy the kits. Well, friends, I think that's enough jibber-jabber out of me. So, hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you found it useful. Go out and build a kit. Have some fun. We'll see you next time.